Imagine coming home after incarceration after serving 13 years for murder. And the person that you murdered was somebody who had been putting their hands on you for 6 years. You were a victim of spousal abuse, for God's sakes. But yet, the court still found it worthy of you going to prison for 13 years, for a decade plus. Imagine coming out here, a world completely changed from when you left. Well, that's sort of what Erin's situation has been like and what her story has been. You're about to meet Erin, a woman who had never been in any trouble before. You've got kids, you've got a life, you've got a regular, everyday, all-American life, and then all of that's gone. And a decade plus later, you come out to all of this. You couldn't even imagine what this is like. But you're about to find out right now on the After Prison Show.
I never realized that the man that I fell in love with, the man that I married, the man that I thought I would spend forever with and started a family with, would end up being the man that I would shoot and kill and lose 13 years of my life behind.
We're here with Erin, and Erin has a story that is very compelling. This is a woman who has been incarcerated, spent 13 years incarcerated for murdering her husband. She was a victim of spousal abuse, and she had never been in trouble before in her life. I think when you hear Erin's story, you're going to be moved and amazed by just what could happen to good people. Erin, thank you so much for agreeing to do the After Prison Show. I know it's got to be a lot to try to tell your story, and we just really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
If you would like to start telling us what it's been like for you.
Well, my name's Erin. I was incarcerated for 12 and a half, almost 13 years. I've been home for about 8 months now. I was incarcerated for originally first-degree murder.
Wow.
And use of a firearm. They knocked it down eventually to second-degree murder. We were married for 7 years, and for at least 6.5 of that, it was extremely abusive.
Could you tell us a little bit about what exactly happened that led to you having this murder charge?
Well, like I said, I was married to him for about 7 years. You know, when I first met him, I'd never been in a relationship, never had a boyfriend, anything like that. I was always the chubby girl that was everybody's friend, or at least that's how I felt.
Okay.
People have tried to convince me since that it's not like that, but that's how I felt, and that's all that matters is where I was at. And so I find this guy who's interested, and I'm thinking, you know, hey, I gotta hold on to this no matter what happens. And so looking back, you know, I put up with a lot of stuff. At the beginning, there were red flags, signs that it was not gonna go well, but choose to ignore them. And when it got to a point that I knew it was unhealthy, I knew it was bad, I knew I deserved better.
Right.
I felt trapped. I felt like there was no other way out. And by definition, I kind of fit every criteria for the whole battered women syndrome that you hear about, which it's really hard to admit that you not only are in that category, but you fit it to a T. There were a few times where he became very controlling, kept like keys and driver's licenses and money and stuff. There was another time I had come in from the grocery store, and apparently he thought I had gone too long for what I was purchasing, and it got physical. I called the police, and when they came to the house, the groceries were everywhere at this point. He told the police that he didn't know what I was talking about. I showed up at the house like that, and he was upset because people had heard yelling because he was trying to get me to tell him what had happened, and I wouldn't tell him.
Right.
So the police officers informed me that since they couldn't get a straight story from either one of us, or a story that matched, that what they could do was either leave and pretend like nothing happened, or they could arrest the both of us for a domestic disturbance and take my kids to foster care. So I told them to leave. But the day that everything happened, I never really slept. He was from Kuwait. He was Arabic. He was an Arabic guy. And he would sleep almost all day, and he was up most of the evening hours. But I was expected to be up all evening with him to take care of him and the kids or whatever. and also be up all during the day to try and take care of these get-rich-quick schemes or investigate them, because he had all these harebrained ideas on, getting rich quick. And so he had called me upstairs and had a question. It was like 2 PM. I had a question about one of these phone calls I was supposed to make. And apparently he didn't like the answers that I had provided to him, because they weren't going his way. And he began to get violent. I had really long hair, and I had it kind of up in this big sloppy ponytail thing. And I was a few steps down on the staircase, and he was on the other side of the landing with a little bar in between the two of us. And he had reached around, he had a hold of me from the back of my head, and he started hitting me, which when he normally did that, because he never left the house, I would put my head down because I got tired of trying to explain bruises and lie about accidents or whatever, whenever I would go out. Right. So I could put my head down, and at some point he had a gun, and he was hitting me with the butt end of it on the head. He put it down to hit me some more with his fist, and when he went to go pick it up, like I said, I was a couple of steps down directly across from him on the landing, and my hands were up against that bar, right under where he had laid the gun down. So when he went back to pick the gun up, I was in a better position and faster, so I grabbed it. I didn't shoot him, I fired a shot straight up in the air. He let go of me, and as I was running downstairs to get the phone, he went after our 6-year-old daughter. She was our oldest at the time, she was 6. And I couldn't even find the phone. It wasn't in the receiver, it was somewhere around the house from when I was making calls. And I was getting ready to hit the page button so I could locate it. And but when I heard him going after her, I went back upstairs. And he continued to go after her. I still had the gun with me, and I held it on him and begged him to stop. He actually turned around and smiled at me. Kind of that, you don't have the guts to do this kind of thing. Wow. And because and I guess at the time he had no reason to think I would. I'd been putting up with it for as long as I had been. And he turned her back around, and I said, I swear if you take another step towards her again, I'm going to pull the trigger. And he took another step, and I fired the gun. And then I went down and found the phone and called 911 and stood up there with him and making sure none of the other kids saw anything. Waiting for the police to come out. And they showed up and got him out. We got all the kids downstairs. We got...
He was dead?
Not at the time.
Oh, okay.
When they took him out of the house, he was still breathing. The detective came in and kind of took me out of the chaos that was going on in the house, and sat me in his car, and the whole time he was questioning me, I kept asking, is he okay? Or not, how is he? What's going on with him? And it was after about an hour and a half that he told me he died. Wow. And he had died at the hospital.
Wow. So after everything that you've gone through, you've been abused for 6 out of the 7 years that you were married. This man was beating you and had, and he picked up a weapon, picked up a gun. For all you knew, his plan was to kill you, and it just so happens that you shot and killed him as he was going after your children. How do you end up with 13 years? What was your court battle like?
Well, like I said, they originally charged me with first-degree murder, which I later found out means that the magistrate or somebody thought I had actually planned this whole thing out.
Like premeditated?
Premeditated kind of thing. It was later dropped to second degree, and I had a hired attorney. I had pretty good faith in him. Right. And his suggestion to me, because of my locality, was to not go with a jury trial. That's what I had originally wanted, because I thought, people are going to hear my story. Right. They're going to at least have some kind of understanding of where I'm coming from.
Possibly even some sympathy.
Right. But I was told no, not to do that. My husband was a Kuwaiti man he was an Arabic man from Kuwait.
Okay.
This was about a year and some change after 9/11.
Okay.
And so he basically said, where you're at, people are going to look at you and think you married a terrorist. So, he said, not only did you have the audacity to marry this guy, you had the audacity to have children with him. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the world does that have to do anything? And he says, well, then on top of all that, you went and you hired an African-American guy. You hired a black attorney to represent you.
So obviously the area that you were going to court in
It
was
was
quite racist.
It was a little more, a little white racist, upper class kind of thing, I guess.
And you feel like that probably definitely played into...
Oh, I mean, it absolutely played into my decision to not have a jury trial.
Okay.
On top of that as well, they kept trying to include my children in testimony phases of this.
Really?
And the oldest was 6, the youngest was 2 months old.
So you mean to tell me they wanted your 2-month-old to testify against you?
I don't know about the 2-month-old, but I mean, they were definitely looking at my 6-year-old and my 5-year-old. My 5-year-old at the time, they were saying was possibly mildly autistic. She wasn't even really vocal.
Oh, okay.
So really, it would have just been the 6-year-old that could have helped them, but I don't care if it was one or all of them. I didn't want to put any of my kids through any more than they'd already been through. Eventually, they came to me with an agreement that they were going to, second-degree murder, they were going to null process the gun charge.
Okay.
And if I took the plea, I could not serve any more than 19 years in prison. No matter what the judge said, he couldn't make my active sentence more than 19 years. And the icing on the cake that made me sign with that pen was they were going to leave my kids out of it. So I took the agreement, and what it ended up being was I didn't have a trial to determine guilt or innocence, but I still got to put on, well, in the Commonwealth as well, we both put on all of our evidence to determine my sentencing.
Right.
So the judge ended up giving me 35 years with 21 suspended, which left me 14 to serve. Virginia being a Commonwealth state, I had to do 85%, and that was, with the best behavior possible, and it turned into 12 and a half years.
So look, so you're a woman who just spent 13 years incarcerated as someone who had never been incarcerated before.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about what prison was like for you as someone who had never even been locked up before.
Well, once I knew that's where I was headed, I was scared to death.
Right.
I mean, I'd never been. My only exposure to prison was TV and
Okay.
TV shows like Oz.
Okay.
And that was kind of the violent side of prison. So I really didn't know what I had in store for me. I kind of lucked out and made friends with some decent people at the jail who had been to prison before and were telling me what to expect. In Virginia, there was one place I was going with my crime, and that was Fluvanna, and they'd been there, and so I knew a little bit more what to expect. So when I got there, it wasn't quite a slap in the face to me.
You talk about opportunities, what are you talking, like trades, classes, things like that?
Trades, classes, programs. The facility that I went to had a lot. First thing I got involved in was making eyeglasses.
Okay.
So I ended up doing a program there, and now I'm Virginia certified as an optician.
Oh, wow.
Then I went on to do computer-aided drafting, did the regular and the advanced. Through that, I got the certification through the American, it's called the ADDA.
Okay.
So I'm American Certified Mechanical Drafter. I also did an electrical class, so I'm a certified electrician's helper.
Wow.
I was involved in something called the MILK program. It's called Mothers Inside Loving Kids. You had to be a good inmate, you had to be a mom, you couldn't have any crimes against a child, any history of anything involving a kid. And if you were selected for that, because it was a selection process, then you got 6 special all-day visits with your child.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you were involved in. It seems like you definitely were, making the most of your time and being quite productive at the same time. Talk to us a little bit about how all of that has worked in your favor, or has it worked in your favor since coming home? I mean, what do you do now for work?
I've applied for other jobs, and if I get a call back at all, which is very rare, it's a turn down.
Basically, the fact that you've served your time. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget the fact that you've had no prior run-ins with the law before this situation, and you were a victim of spousal abuse at the same time. You got all these trades while you were incarcerated, and none of that has helped you since being released.
Not in my mind, at all.
Erin, look, we really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to tell your story with the After Prison Show. It cannot possibly be an easy thing to do, to talk about the things that you've gone through, let alone to live the things that you've gone through. you took all these programs while you were incarcerated, you've done multiple trade programs, you've participated in other programs, and that your crime happened over 13 years ago, and then add on to that the nature of your crime, you know, the fact that you were an actual victim in this whole thing, you would imagine that, you know, it would be a little bit easier, or at least somebody would be willing to give you more of a chance than what they've given you so far.
Right. And I think that's what's been shocking to me is I think I expected by this point that somebody else would open a door for me.
Right.
I mean, I don't expect them to usher me through. All I'm looking for is an opportunity.
And I just want to thank you for your
you.
time and for telling all of us your story here on the After Prison Show.
Thank you.
Thank you.